Bienvenidos a Puro Pinche Gol. This is the podcast where we talk all things Selección Mexicana and Liga MX. If this is your first time with us, my name is Adrian Cruz, and welcome to our Mexicanos en Europa recap. If you haven't watched any of our content, every single week we drop a video where we discuss cómo les fue a los mexicanos en Europa la última semana. In this case, we're going to be talking about the week of May 23 to May 26 of 2025. All right. And as I mentioned, here you will pretty much get a summary of how well our fellow um, Mexicanos fared during the last game of their season. Uh, yep. So without further ado, let's get the intro rolling and we shall start. All right, let's start with La Premier League and, of course, El Lobo de Fulham, Raúl Jiménez, where unfortunately for him, the last game of the season ended with a loss versus Manchester City 2-0. He played the full match, all 90 minutes. Kind of a dud of a match for him. He couldn't do much to help his team. But I think overall, a quick summary of the season for Raúl Jiménez, I think it was a very good one, all things considered. Understanding that he's a 30, 35, 34 years of age and he's still rocking it at La Premier League, and he's definitely having an impact on the Selección Mexicana. So we really hope to see him at least at this level for next year on a World Cup year. So hopefully not many injuries or not injuries at all, and he's able to to continue this performance level. Edson Álvarez and West Ham, they won their last game of the season, 3-1 versus Ipswich Town. He played 80 minutes. It was a good game for him. Granted, he needed this kind of performance display as the last game of the season. Overall, quick review. I think this season was a very roller coaster kind of a ride for him, where he had super high peaks and very low lows. In the sense of he was having some great matches one weekend, and the next weekend he was either getting red carded, making fouls, unnecessary fouls in the middle of the pitch, to the point that he was either getting benched or not getting even called up for some of these matches. So kind of a difficult but okay season for Edson Alvarez, as I think it's his sophomore year at West Ham, so second year for him. Hopefully, he remains at West Ham and he continues to see more minutes. Although I've read and I've seen that he most likely will make a move to another league. I heard that he was linked to Monaco as well, so I wouldn't mind if he goes somewhere else. Even if he goes to a even lower team in the Premier League, I think it will be fine. He definitely needs to get more minutes on 2026, or I guess the second half of 2025 and the the half of the season before the World Cup, so he gets into a very great shape and performance level before the World Cup begins. Julián Araujo with Bournemouth. He was benched for the last game of the season. Unfortunately for him, this was pretty much the gist of his entire season. It was a rough one for Julián Araujo. He kind of sort of had a good start with Bournemouth, then dipped in form, then had an injury that made him unavailable for a good chunk of the season. When he was finally able to be um, playable or be an available player for Bournemouth, he I think that the ship had sailed for this season, where uh, the other right back took the spot and wasn't able to, or wasn't, I mean, pretty much didn't let it go. So tough one for him, because he was either benched or not even called up for any of the matches. In this case, he was called up, he was just benched. What does this mean for Julián Araujo? I think Julián Araujo should definitely stay at Bournemouth. It's a good team for him. I believe Most likely, Berman will sell some of their players. They're on the right back. I've heard that Liverpool and some of the big teams are um, doing some rounds on their fullbacks, and they're probably going to see them go, which means that Julián Araujo will have a new opportunity to prove that he can be the go-to right back for Bournemouth. So I really hope that he gets to stay there, that he withstands the maybe the anxiety to find a new team and get more playing time. I think if he's patient, he will get that playing time this coming season. Now going to the Scottish Premier League. As you know, all three Mexican players playing in the Scottish League are with Dundee FC. Antonio Portales, Cesar Garza, and Chespi López. Antonio Portales, he did play on the last game of the season, which didn't happen last weekend, but 2 weekends ago, where they won 2-0 versus St. Johnstone, and he played 90 minutes with a very good performance. This last weekend, there were no matches because the season is over. Overall, for the three of them, I think Antonio Portales had another good season with Dundee FC, where he continues to be a very frequent starting 11 player. There were a couple of weeks here and there where he was either bench, not called up, or coming as a sub. In comparison to Cesar Garza and Chespi Lopez that came into Dundee FC, if I'm not mistaken, in the second half of the season. They didn't see as much playtime as Antonio Portales did. Cesar Garza did see more minutes than Chespi Lopez. Um, and for example, Cesar Garza was benched through the entire match, through the entire last match of the season, where Chespi Lopez wasn't even called up. What does this mean for the two Monterrey Academy players? Well, I really hope that they get to stay another year with this Scottish Premier side with Dundee FC. I believe this is a great development league for them, and it will just do them a huge favor to remain there and continue to find a more competitive environment that rather than going back to Liga MX and getting freaking bought by Querétaro, Puebla, Mazatlan. I think even though they might see more playing time at those teams, I don't think they will learn or develop as much as they will, even if they're just playing a few minutes here and there with Dundee FC. So hopefully they get to see more. You get to stay with Dundee FC and see more time in the Scottish Premier League. Moving on to Serie A, Johan Vásquez. Unfortunately for him, he was injured on the last game of the season where Genoa won 3-1 versus Bologna. He was injured. I don't know how big of an injury it is. I believe from what I was able to read, it's not too much to worry. They pretty much say, hey, there's no need for you to play this last match. So they put him on he wasn't even called up, and he's resting due to his call up for Mexico's Gold Cup squad, which I think is a great idea. Overall, I think Johan Vasquez has been the best Mexican player, all things considered, over the last year and a half, 2 years. Every single year that he spent in Serie A, he's been consistently becoming a better defender. So much so that this specific season, this summer transfer season, he's been linked to the likes of Juventus, Inter de Milan, and Milan. I really hope that this last display during 2024-2025 season helps him nail a spot at a bigger team. Maybe if it's not in Serie A, somewhere else where he can go to a team that has more European competition playtime, so he can get exposed to that specific, um, market and continue growing his career. So great for Johan Vasquez. I think he's a good example of what Mexican players should do, and I really hope that he continues on that upward trend. El Bebote Jiménez, Santi Jiménez, as you know, 2 weekends ago he got a red card. I don't know if it was a Serie A or a Coppa d'Italia match, but whatever it was, he was uneligible to play on this last game of the season due to the red card. Um, how was the second half of the season for El Bebote joining Milan? I think he came in super hot with assists and scoring goals through the middle of the second half of the season with Milan. He kind of sort of went through a dud, through a very low production or very low productivity um, time span, and he kind of sort of end up with some sparks on these last couple of matches. He did see some playing time at the European level with AC Milan, I believe, playing Europa League, if I'm not mistaken, and or no, I can't even remember what it was, guys. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Leave me in the comments if I'm being dumb, and I don't know if it was Champions League. I don't know what it is. No, it wasn't Champions League because they got Milan got they got eliminated by Feyenoord, wasn't it? I believe that's the case. Anyways, I think both the Jiménez had an okay season, second half of the season with Milan. ¿Qué significa para Bote Jiménez? Yo esperaría que el Bote Jiménez tenga un mejor año el siguiente año. I hope that he gets to play way more time with Milan and let everyone know that he is going to be and he will be the go-to striker for the team. That's what I hope for him. Less injuries, more playing time, and way more goals. So let's see what the future departs for Lebote Jimenez, but I hope that it's a bright one. Now going to Greece, Orbelín Pineda and AEK Athens. That league has been over since the last, I believe, 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago was the last game of the season where he played 78 minutes and they lost 1-0. I think overall it was a decent season for Orbelín Pineda at AEK Athens. Not as good as the last one, not as good as 2023, 2024, where he became a champion, if I'm not mistaken. In this season, he saw regular play times, which is great. But I believe he saw way more bench time this season. Now that Pelado Almeida is out of the picture with AEK Athens, I believe Orbelín Pineda will do anything he can to make a move back to Liga MX or to MLS. I really hope that he reconsiders and maybe find a spot somewhere else, perhaps in Eredivisie or a small team in Spain. I think that would be great. All things considered, it is going to be a season ending with a World Cup next season. So for him to keep on playing at the highest level possible will be ideal because I think El Vasco Aguirre will definitely take that in consideration. But we'll see. We have always heard Orbelín Pineda getting linked to a top six team in Liga MX, Monterrey, Tigres, América, Cruz Azul, Toluca. So I wouldn't be surprised now that El Pelado Almeida is out, that he forces a move to Liga MX. Also, I wouldn't hold my breath, but ahora que el pelado Almeida está o aceptó ser el técnico de Pachuca, no se sorprendan ver a Orbelín Pineda con la camiseta de los Tuzos. Denmark, the Danish league, Denmark. I don't know what's the official name of the Denmark league, but Rodrigo Huescas ended the season on a high note. 3-0 win versus a team that I'm just gonna butcher their name, Nordsjælland. I hope I said that right. He played 90 minutes and he had a very good performance. I think this is great for him, ending the season on a high note. Pretty much playing every single match. The last four out of the four matches, out of the last four matches, he he saw minutes. He saw a consistent number of minutes. As you know, he got in some trouble due to speeding, so he won't be representing Mexico in the Gold Cup roster. He wasn't called up on the 60-man roster, and I don't think there's any chance that he's gonna get called up on the 23-man roster. And I believe it's because he's supposed to fulfill his sentence of I don't know how many days he needs to be doing either social service or in jail due to speeding. But I think overall it was a very good season for Rodrigo Huescas, where he started again hot, kind of sort of had a small fizzle out in the middle. Difficult for him to pick it back up on the second half, but when he did, he proved why he was scouted and bought by Copenhagen. I think he needs to spend another year at Copenhagen to finally prove that he's starting level caliber player, and so he can graduate from the Danish league and move to a more competitive one like Eredivisie or the Belgian Pro League, or even in Portugal. I think that will be a good next stepping stone for Rodrigo Huescas. Hopefully that's the case. Hopefully he continues to play at this level and we see him at the World Cup. In Russia, listen, I don't follow the Russian league. I know very little of the Russian league. It's difficult to see it, so don't ask me too much. All I know is Luis Chavez did not play on the last game of the season where Dynamo Moscow lost against Krasnodar because he was injured. I don't know how big of or how little of an injury is. I hope that he is um, in good shape when he joins Mexico for the Gold Cup because I think he will make the 23-man roster for the Gold Cup anyways. And then we also have Cesar Montes who played the last game of the season, all minutes, 90 minutes on Lokomotiv Moscow win versus Akron Togliatti. I don't know if I'm butchering the name, but that's the name of the team. They won 4-1. And again, he played the entire match. Good ending note for Cesar Montes that had a rough second half of the season where he did see some consistent play time, but he also had an injury, had to, was benched for a few matches, and also at sometimes not even getting called up. What's going to happen with Cesar Montes and Luis Chavez? I believe both of them are probably going to force a move out of their Russian teams. It's kind of difficult for them because once, as we all know, there's a bunch of restrictions against Russia in the international stage, specifically for transfers and whatnot. And I also believe these two players are valued slightly pricey for a middle of the table team in Portugal, Spain, or one of the top teams in Eredivisie, Belgium, whatever the case may be. So I believe Luis Chavez most likely will end up going back to Liga MX or finding a spot in MLS because, of course, he wants to be closer to Vasco Aguirre, specifically knowing that next year is a World Cup year. So he needs to have way more one-on-one time with Vasco Aguirre, or at least being in a spot where Vasco Aguirre gets to see his matches on a more regular basis. Cesar Montes also being heavily linked on making a move back to Liga MX. Va a pasar, no lo sé. I know that Monterrey wants him pretty badly. I know that America also has scouted the idea of bringing him back. I don't know what's the situation with him. He's still technically at a very good age to make a move back to Spain, to a smaller team in Spain, middle of the table or low end of the table, or maybe a top team in Portugal, maybe a top team in Belgium. I would love for him to do that instead of going back to Liga MX or taking cash in MLS. I understand that perhaps going back to Liga MX or joining an MLS side will guarantee him way more playing time, and of course a economics stability that no one can offer. But in terms of him becoming a better player and getting in the best performance and shape for Mexico going into the World Cup, I believe staying in Europe should be a priority for him. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the Belgian Pro League, Chino Huerta and Anderlecht, and Heriberto Jurado with Cercle Bruges. Here's the deal. The Belgian Pro League is not done yet. They still have the championship match, the last match between Antwerp and some other team that I cannot recall the name of. But the season ended last weekend for Chino Huerta, where they lost 2-1, and he didn't play. He wasn't even called up. I was unable to find any relevant information as to why he was not called up. My assumption is that either him or Mexico or even the team was like, hey, you know what? There's no need for you to, either get stressed out or injured or whatever. So that he didn't get called up. Similar situation for Heriberto Jurado, whose season ended even before Chino Huertas because Cercle Bruges. I'm sorry for my butchered French. I do know French, but I butcher it right now. Um, they didn't even qualify for the championship round of the Jupiler Pro League in Belgium. So overall, I think Chino Huerta had a really good second half of the season with Anderlecht because he joined them in January. Similar situation with Roberto Jurado where he joined Cercle Bruges on the second half of the season, but he didn't do as hot as Chino Huerta. Unfortunately for Heriberto Joel, it has been a very difficult time in Belgium where he has seen very limited play time with his team. Um, I think here's my assessment. I believe both of them should remain where they are. They should stay put in the Belgian Pro League at least for another year. I believe Chino Huerta will continue to see him consistent play time, and he should aim and focus and prioritize every single thing in his life to become a go-to starting 11 player. You know, remove the tag of being a rotational player and you know put the roots down and become a indispensable starting 11 player for Anderlecht that will make him easier for him to make a move to a bigger league or bigger team, whether in Portugal, Spain, or whatever the case may be. I think he will do well at Serie A. But that's just my opinion. As far as Heriberto Jurado, I really hope he doesn't get discouraged due to this difficult season he just had. I believe that if he focuses just like Chino Huerta to prove that he's worthy of more playtime with Cercle Bruges, he will definitely convince them. He was a very interesting prospect and talent in Liga MX. I understand that maybe making a move back to Liga MX is tempting because of the playtime, and of course maybe having a slim chance of becoming part of that World Cup roster for Mexico. As you know, Mexico uses a ton of local talent from Liga MX to fulfill their national team spots. But I listen. I don't think even if he makes a move back to Liga MX and he plays every single minute of the season, I don't think he realistically has a chance to to take a spot in that roster. So I really hope that he stays there, even if he's just training, even if he's just taking, playing very limited minutes. It will do him way better. He will just improve and develop way quicker and way better if he stays in Belgium than going back and playing for Chivas or for Necaxa or for Cholos, whichever. Because I don't think he's gonna get bought by a big team in Mexico. But that is it, my fellas. That is it. This is the last repaso semanal de los mexicanos en Europa of this season. We'll come back whenever all seasons start again. So around middle of August, beginning of September, you will see us again. But don't fret because we will have a review of the season for all these players and determine if they need to make a transfer or not. I just give you some of my thoughts, but I'm going to make a more elaborate video talking about that. So, without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. You can also find us in Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast on. Last but not least, you will also find us on TikTok and Instagram. We post memes, latest news, and shorts of our episodes. Don't forget to leave me a comment below. What do you think? Who was the best Mexican player in Europe this season? Do you think Chino Huerta will continue to be an interesting talent in the Belgian Pro League? What are your thoughts on the Mexicans playing in Russia? Should they stay in Russia? Should they move? And if they move, should they go back to Liga MX? And why isn't Rodrigo Huescas getting called up? Do you think Mexico should have done more to have him on the Gold Cup roster? Or do you believe that he should be a good citizen of Copenhagen and pay his dues? I will see you in a couple of months or maybe next week. I don't know. Keep watching our content. And just like those balloons, I'm out of here.